I always thought I knew Asia. I'd spent time in places like Japan, Thailand, Singapore, and China, each unique in its own way, but still fitting into the patterns I expected from Asia. Clean, organized cities, street food markets, cultural traditions blended with modern lifestyles. I thought I had the continent figured out until I stepped foot in India. India didn't just add a new layer to my understanding of Asia, it completely flipped it upside down. The moment I landed, the air itself felt different, richer, louder, more alive. The colors on the streets, the rhythm of the traffic, the smell of spices and incense mixing with exhaust fumes. It was overwhelming, exhilarating, and disorienting all at once. But here's the thing. India isn't just another stop on the Asian travel map. It's a world of its own. While much of East and Southeast Asia is often seen as streamlined, orderly, and predictable, India thrives on contrasts. Chaos and calm exist side by side. Poverty and wealth share the same streets. And spirituality isn't tucked away in temples. It spills into everyday life. And that's exactly what makes India so misunderstood. From the outside, people reduce it to cliches: the Taj Mahal, Bollywood, spicy curry, or crowded trains. But the real India? It's so much bigger, so much deeper. In this video, I'm going to take you through that journey. The culture shock, the food that blew my mind, the rhythm of daily life, the incredible warmth of the people, the spiritual depth, and the lessons I never expected to learn. Because if you think you know Asia, India will challenge everything you thought you understood. The first impressions. The very first moments in India hit me like a tidal wave of sensation. The moment I stepped out of the airport, it was as if the entire country rushed in to greet me. The humid air heavy with the aroma of spices, incense, and exhaust fumes. The sound of car horns blaring in chaotic unison. The riot of colors from saris, billboards, and street stalls glowing under the night lights. Compared to my earlier trips to Asia, the quiet efficiency of Japan, the organized calm of Thailand's airports, India felt like walking straight into a carnival that never ends. It wasn't just noise for the sake of noise. There was a rhythm underneath it, a kind of pulse that everyone seemed to understand except me. Taxis swerved around cows on the road. Auto rickshaws zipped through impossibly tight gaps, and vendors shouted prices over the din of traffic. At first, it was overwhelming. I remember gripping my backpack tightly, unsure where to even look, because everywhere was alive with motion and meaning. One of my first experiences was taking an auto rickshaw to my hotel. The driver laughed when I tried to negotiate the fare, then told me not to worry, that he'd get me there safely. As we sped through the crowded streets, I caught glimpses of fruit sellers balancing baskets on their heads, children chasing a cricket ball, and families squeezed onto one motorbike. It was chaotic, yes, but it was also exhilarating. That first night in India, I realized something important. This wasn't going to be the kind of trip where you dip your toes into a country. India demands that you dive in, all at once. Food, the flavor explosion. If there's one thing that shattered my idea of Asia the fastest, it was the food. I'd grown used to the balanced flavors of Japanese cuisine, the chilly heat of Thai dishes, the savory depth of Chinese stir-fries, and the fermented bite of Korean kimchi. But India? India was something else entirely. The food here didn't just taste good. It told stories, it carried history, and it set my mouth on fire in ways I never thought possible. What struck me first was the sheer diversity. In the north, I was greeted with rich, buttery curries like paneer butter masala and slow-cooked biryanis infused with saffron. In the south, the flavors shifted dramatically: tangy tamarind, fiery chilies, coconut-infused gravies, and crisp dosas served with chutneys that made every bite a surprise. On the coasts, seafood dominated, grilled and spiced in ways that reminded me of Southeast Asia, but with a complexity that was uniquely Indian. Then there was the street food, an entire universe in itself. I'll never forget standing at a crowded stall, trying pani puri for the first time. A crisp hollow shell stuffed with spicy water and potato. The explosion of flavor was so shocking I almost coughed it out, while the locals laughed good-naturedly at my rookie mistake. Chaat, samosas, kathi rolls, vada pav. Each snack seemed to break the rules of what I thought food could be. Of course, there were challenges. My stomach had to adjust, and there were times when the spice level nearly defeated me. Hygiene worries made me cautious at first, but slowly, I realized that food wasn't just something to consume in India, it was a way to connect. Sharing a thali with strangers, being invited for a home-cooked meal, or sipping chai on the roadside. Each moment of eating was also a moment of belonging. In India, food wasn't just about survival or pleasure. It was culture, identity, and hospitality served on a plate. The chaos and the rhythm. Nothing prepares you for Indian traffic. At first glance, it looks like complete madness. Cars, rickshaws, trucks, buses, bikes, pedestrians, and yes, cows, all fighting for space on the same road. The horns don't stop. They're a constant background track, each beep carrying its own message. I'm here, move over, or don't even think about cutting in. Coming from places like Japan or Singapore, where traffic flows neatly in orderly lanes, this felt like another universe. My instinct was to panic. How could anyone survive this chaos? But then I started noticing something fascinating. Despite the lack of apparent rules, everything worked. Cars missed each other by inches, but they never collided. Pedestrians slipped between moving vehicles, and somehow everyone adjusted in real time. I realized it wasn't chaos for the sake of chaos. It was rhythm. It was a system that looked impossible from the outside, but everyone on the inside understood instinctively. Once I stopped resisting it and just flowed along, the streets felt less like a battleground and more like a living organism, constantly moving, constantly adapting. Public transport was another eye-opener. Trains so crowded that people hung out of the doors, buses overflowing with passengers, and yet, people made it work. Strangers squeezed together, sharing space without complaint, helping each other up and down. The madness of rush hour became less intimidating when I noticed the small acts of kindness tucked inside it. That S when it hit me. India's chaos is really a different kind of order, one that is flexible, patient, and human-centered. It taught me to let go of control, to stop fighting the unpredictability, and to learn to move with the flow. Because in India, the rhythm of life doesn't slow down for anyone. You have to learn to dance with it. People and hospitality. If my first impression of India was overwhelming, it didn't take long for the people to completely change that. At first, the crowds felt intimidating. Everywhere I went, there were people, markets packed shoulder to shoulder, families walking together, children running through alleyways. Compared to the quieter, more reserved interactions I'd experienced in East Asia, it felt like too much. But then something shifted. Beneath the noise and the rush, I began to notice a warmth that was unlike anywhere else I'd been. Strangers didn't just pass by, they engaged. Shopkeepers asked where I was from, not just to sell me something, but because they were genuinely curious. Families on trains offered me food from their tiffin boxes. Neighbors in my guest house invited me in for chai, laughing as they taught me how to pour it the right way. One evening, I got lost wandering in a maze of streets. My phone had died, and I didn't know how to get back. A group of teenagers noticed my confusion, and instead of just pointing me in the direction, they walked with me for nearly 20 minutes, making sure I found my way. Before we parted, they insisted I join them for street food, and that turned into one of my favorite nights in India. That generosity, that instinct to care for strangers, redefined hospitality for me. It wasn't about fancy hotels or polite service. It was about making you feel at home even when you were thousands of miles away. In East Asia, kindness often comes wrapped in politeness and distance. In India, it comes with open arms, shared meals, and genuine laughter. It reminded me that community isn't something you find behind closed doors. It's alive out in the streets, waiting to welcome you in. Diversity on steroids. The deeper I traveled, the more I realized that calling India a single country feels almost misleading. It's more like a continent stitched together. Everywhere I went, the language, food, clothing, and traditions shifted, sometimes so drastically it felt like I had crossed into a new nation. India officially recognizes 22 languages, but in reality, hundreds are spoken daily. I'd hear Hindi in Delhi, Bengali in Kolkata, Tamil in Chennai, Punjabi in Amritsar, and that's just scratching the surface. Each region had its own script, accent, and slang. Unlike many other Asian countries where one dominant language binds the culture, India thrives on multilingualism. Religion adds another layer of diversity. Hindu temples with their towering gopurams, mosques echoing with the call to prayer, churches filled with hymns, Sikh Gurdwaras serving free meals to anyone who enters. Faith here isn't just a private practice. It's woven into the streets, the festivals, the food. In 1 month, I witnessed Diwali lights, Eid celebrations, and a Christmas mass. It was dizzying, but also beautiful. And then there are the regions themselves. The desert forts of Rajasthan felt worlds apart from the lush backwaters of Kerala. The Himalayas in Himachal Pradesh felt like a different planet compared to the bustling streets of Mumbai. In Japan or Korea, cultural identity often feels unified, but in India, every state, every city, every village has its own fiercely proud identity. What struck me most was how these countless identities coexisted. Yes, there are tensions and differences, but somehow, the diversity doesn't divide, it defines. India is proof that unity doesn't always mean sameness. By the time I left, I realized I hadn't just visited one country. I had experienced dozens of different Indias, each with its own flavor, language, and soul. It wasn't one Asia, it was 1,000 Asias, all under one name. Spirituality and philosophy. One of the things that surprised me most about India was how deeply spirituality is woven into everyday life. In much of East Asia, I had seen societies that lean heavily toward material progress, cutting-edge technology in Japan, consumer culture in South Korea, the relentless pace of modern China. Spirituality often feels tucked away in shrines, monasteries, or museums. But in India, it's everywhere, on the streets, in the homes, in the daily routines of ordinary people. Yoga wasn't just something people did in fancy studios. It was a living tradition practiced in parks at sunrise. Meditation wasn't treated as a wellness trend, but as a centuries-old discipline guiding how people understand themselves and the world. Even Ayurveda, the ancient system of healing, wasn't confined to books. I saw it in the oils sold at markets, in the remedies offered by locals, and in the way people approached balance in life. Visiting places like the Ghats of Varanasi drove the point home. Watching pilgrims bathe in the Ganges at dawn, while the sound of temple bells and chants filled the air, was unlike anything I had ever experienced. In ashrams, I saw seekers from around the world sitting side by side with locals, searching for peace and meaning. And in every city, temples stood not just as monuments, but as living spaces, bustling with prayer, rituals, and community. What struck me most was that spirituality wasn't separate from life in India. It wasn't a weekend hobby or a retreat from the world. It was the foundation of daily existence. From the man whispering a prayer before starting his shop, to the family lighting diyas in the evening, it was everywhere. India doesn't just ask you to look at the world. It asks you to look inward, to reflect on your own life, your values, and your place in the universe. The beauty and struggle. India is a country of breathtaking beauty and equally undeniable struggle. What makes it so powerful is that the two exist side by side, often within the same frame. One moment I'd be staring up at a gleaming skyscraper in Mumbai, and the next, I'd see a sprawling slum stretching at its base. Shiny new metro lines zipped through cities where power cuts were still part of daily life. Luxury malls stood a few blocks away from crowded bazaars where families lived on the street. The contrasts were striking, sometimes uncomfortable, always humbling. Infrastructure challenges are real. Roads crumble, traffic jams seem endless, and bureaucratic systems can test even the most patient traveler. Environmental issues weigh heavily too. Pollution in Delhi's air, rivers under strain, and water scarcity in rural areas. On the surface, it's easy to focus on the problems. But then, there's the other side, resilience. Indians have mastered the art of jugaad, a word that roughly means clever improvisation. From repairing a broken vehicle with whatever's available, to setting up innovative startups that solve massive challenges, the creativity and determination here are unlike anywhere else. I saw children playing cricket with sticks and rubber balls, laughing as though they had the world at their feet. I met entrepreneurs turning local problems into global opportunities. I witnessed communities rally together during festivals or hardships, showing that collective spirit always wins over individual struggle. The lesson was clear. India forces you to look at life in its full spectrum, the harsh and the beautiful, the despair and the hope, the broken and the thriving. And in doing so, it teaches you to embrace complexity rather than run from it. Hidden gems beyond stereotypes. Before I arrived, My mental image of India was shaped by cliches: the Taj Mahal, crowded cities, Bollywood dances, spicy curry. But once I started exploring, I realized those stereotypes barely scratched the surface. Yes, the Taj Mahal is breathtaking, but India's true beauty lies in the places tourists often overlook, like the serene mountains of Himachal Pradesh, where I hiked through villages surrounded by apple orchards, or the golden deserts of Rajasthan, where camel rides at sunset made me feel like I'd stepped into another century. In Kerala, I floated through lush backwaters on a houseboat, watching daily village life unfold along the riverbanks. Each region felt like its own universe. Then there were the cities, not the ancient ruins or palaces I expected, but booming modern hubs. Bengaluru with its tech-driven startups and coffee culture. Hyderabad with its booming IT industry and centuries-old food traditions. Mumbai with its skyline, film studios, and sheer unstoppable energy. India wasn't just holding on to its past, it was charging full speed into the future. But what really won me over were the everyday joys. Sharing cups of steaming chai at roadside stalls with locals who insisted I take just one more sip. Getting swept up in the excitement of a cricket match where the whole street seemed to erupt in cheers. Watching Bollywood films in crowded cinemas where the audience clapped, whistled, and shouted like it was a live concert. The realization hit me. India isn't frozen in tradition, nor is it only about poverty or monuments. It's alive, constantly evolving, balancing history and modernity in a way that no other place I've seen can match. Culture shock moments, of course. Traveling in India also came with its fair share of culture shocks, the kinds of experiences that threw me off balance at first but ended up becoming the most memorable stories. Bargaining in markets, for example, was an art form I had to learn quickly. At first, I felt awkward haggling over a few rupees, but soon realized it was expected, and even fun once you got into the rhythm of it. Then there were the animals. In what other country would you find cows calmly strolling down the middle of a busy highway, or monkeys casually climbing onto rooftops? At first, I laughed at the absurdity, but eventually, it just felt normal. Daily life required adjustments too. Bucket showers instead of running hot water. Power cuts that turned nights into candlelit evenings. The relentless heat in some regions that forced me to slow down, even when I wanted to move fast. And then there were the Indian weddings. Days of celebration, music, dance, food, and color. It made every wedding I'd attended elsewhere look almost minimalist. Being invited to one was like being pulled into the heart of India's love for life. Even the trains were an adventure. Squeezing into crowded compartments, sitting shoulder to shoulder with strangers, sharing food and stories. It was chaotic, but it was also unforgettable. Every shock eventually turned into a story, and every story became a lesson. India didn't just challenge my comfort zone. It stretched it so wide that I had to rethink what normal really meant. Lessons India taught me looking back. I realized India wasn't just a destination, it was a teacher. Every experience, whether joyful or challenging, came with a lesson I didn't know I needed. Patience was the first. Trains ran late. Traffic moved at its own pace. Bureaucracy tested my limits. But instead of fighting it, I learned to adapt. India taught me that life doesn't always run on schedule, and that's okay. Flexibility followed. Plans changed constantly: weather, festivals, strikes, or simply the unpredictability of daily life. At first, I resisted. Then I realized that flexibility was the only way forward, and once I embraced it, life felt lighter. Gratitude grew stronger too. Seeing families live joyfully with so little made me reflect on my own excesses. Sharing meals, laughter, and kindness showed me that happiness isn't about what you have, but how you live. The importance of family and community struck me deeply. In India, family wasn't just parents and children. It was grandparents, cousins, neighbors, even strangers who quickly became like kin. That collective spirit reminded me how isolating individualistic societies can sometimes feel. Most importantly, India taught me to embrace contradictions, to accept that beauty and struggle, chaos and peace, tradition and modernity can all exist together. Instead of resisting those contradictions, I learned to find meaning in them. India, in the end, wasn't just a place I visited. It was a mirror that reflected back my assumptions, stripped them apart, and rebuilt a new way of seeing the world. Conclusion: when I first arrived in India, I thought I was simply visiting another Asian country. But by the time I left, I realized that India had completely redefined what Asia meant to me. The food, the chaos, the spirituality, the warmth of the people, the diversity, the struggles, and triumphs. All of it combined into an experience that went beyond travel. It wasn't about sightseeing or checking off monuments. It was about being transformed. India forced me to look at the world differently. It challenged my comfort zones, opened my heart to strangers, and reminded me that life is bigger, louder, and more complex than I had ever imagined. Asia had felt familiar to me before, but India expanded it into something infinitely richer. My message to anyone watching is simple. Don't come to India expecting it to fit neatly into your idea of Asia. Come with an open mind, and let India show you its contradictions, its beauty, and its lessons. It won't always be easy, but it will always be worth it. I thought I knew Asia, but India showed me I was just scratching the surface.